Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to go over day 2 for the chapter 9 review, specifically problems 9 through 17. Okay, so let's take a look at problem number 9 here. It says to find the equivalent form of the quadratic equation written as a quadratic formula. So as you know, when we're solving the quadratic formula, it has to be in standard form. Okay, that is in vertex form or graphing form. So you got to change that. In order to change that, you're just going to simplify and multiply out that difference of, that perfect squared trinomial. So we do x plus 3 times x plus 3. Remember, it's not x plus 9. It's a common mistake that you guys were making earlier on in this semester. It's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, because if you forgot how to do that, put them in the box just like that, and you'll find that that's what you get. Okay, and then it equals 5. So right now it's still not in standard form. You got to move everything to one side. So in order to do that, we're going to subtract, and our new equation is x squared plus 6x plus 4. From there, we can apply the quadratic formula. Alright, so there it is. We're going to plug in our b value, okay, which is 6. We plug in our a value, which is that invisible 1, and our c value, which is a 4. Okay, so we have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared is 36. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 4 is negative 16 all over 2. And as you can tell, if you're just looking by the options on our answers, I've already done too much work. In fact, you should identify that A is going to be our answer. Okay, so this one, the purpose of this question is if you can tell, or if you know what to do using the quadratic formula when it's given to you in a vertex form. So as you can see, the only difference really is the c value. Okay, the c values, got to make sure it is a positive 4, it is not 9, it is not 5, and that's really the purpose of this question. Okay, move to question number 10. Question number 10 says the inequality is shown. Can you rewrite it for n? So this goes back to your math skills here, your algebra skills, and can you solve an equation? So let's just solve this real quickly. We're going to try and isolate n. First thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute that negative 3/4, right? So when I have negative 3/4 times 12n, I'm going to get to reduce that. So we're going to do it, for 20 as well. Okay, so when we're simplifying that, 4 goes into 12 3 times. So I have a negative 3 times 3n, that's going to be a negative 9n. And then 4 goes into 25 times, and 3 times negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15. And then don't forget that I have that minus n as well. Okay, then it's going to be less than or equal to 1/2 n plus 6. So at this point we're going to combine like terms. Negative 9n and negative n is negative 10n minus 15, less than or equal to 1/2 n plus 6. And now we're going to move and combine our n's on both sides. As a rule of thumb, I've always told you guys to get rid of the smaller n. Okay, so the smaller n is going to be the negative 10n. Right? To get rid of that negative 10n, we're going to do the opposite, which is the inverse property, which is add 10n. I'm going to add 10n to both sides. And then over here, I might as well subtract that 6. Okay, so I get negative 21 less than or equal to 10.5n, 10.5n. Okay, last step, I'm going to divide both sides by 10.5, and I will get negative 2 is less than or equal to n. Now, when you guys are doing this, you always want to make sure that your n, your variable, whatever it is, in this case it's an n, you want to rewrite it so that it's on the left. Okay, because that's how you read it, that's how it's going to make sense, that's how it's going to help you graph it. So because we flipped it on the left, you got to make sure that you are flipping your inequality. So So your new inequality, instead of now less than or equal to, it's greater than or equal to. Okay, so there's your final answer. Now, write that answer down if you haven't gotten it already, because I'm going to show you the other way to do it. And it's greater than or less than, or excuse me, greater than or equal to -2. So remember I told you to get rid of the smaller n, and we subtracted it, or you added a 10n, right? Now those of you guys who do not want to do it that way, you want to do it this way, it's going to be the same thing, it's just slightly different steps. So you get a -10.5n, and then to get rid of the 15, the -15, I'm going to add a 15. So -10.5n is less than or equal to 21. And when we divide, notice what we're dividing by now. Okay, we're dividing by a negative. If you recall, our answer is going to be a -2, right? As you recall, whenever you divide or multiply by a negative, your inequality also gets flipped. So regardless, you will get that same answer. All right, number 11. Which of these, or the solution set to which of these systems is graphed below? For this one, you just have to look at your inequalities and how they're shaded. Are they shaded less than, or are they shaded greater than? And then you're asking yourselves if it's a dashed line or a solid line. Both of these are dashed lines. And let's take a look at this one right here. That's a dashed line, and that one's going to be y equals x. The slope looks like it's rise 1, run 1, delta y is 1, delta x is 1. So, and because we're shading below, it's going to be y is less than x. So those are our two possible answers so far. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cross out B and D. So now the second inequality, right there, it's y is, it's shading below once again, right? Shading below, so y is less than -x plus 4. Okay, so it's not going to be C, because C is y is greater than. So your answer is going to be A, because y is less than, because less is where you're shading below. Okay. Let's go to number 12. Same deal here. You're asking yourselves solid line or dotted line, and then are we shading below, or are we shading above the line? Okay. So remember, if you guys are still stuck on how to shade below or above, you're just going to put your pencil literally on top of that line, right on top of that line, and ask yourself if it goes, if you're shading, if you can move that pencil down below the line like I have there. I just moved it down, or should I move it up? And if I moved it down is where the shading is. That's going to be less than. Okay, so that line is a dashed line, so we know that it's A or B, or excuse me, A or C, because B and D are greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. We don't want that or equal to part. And because it's less, so shading below, our answer is going to be A. C says greater, that would have been shading above. Okay. All right, let's look at number 13. Which of the inequalities, or which of the graphs represent that solution? So in order to do this properly, you're going to have to isolate x. So you're going to subtract 10 on both sides. So we get 4x is less than -4. Divide both sides by 4. Notice I divided by a +4, not a -4, right? Because I divided by a positive, that inequality will not change. So x is less than 1. Our answer is A. Less than means we don't bubble in that circle. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one here. Problem 14. Kind of the same thing. Which inequality is graphed here? Again, solid line. Solid line means it's going to be or equal to. The question is, which one of these is it? Because they're all or equal to. So what I would do here, if all the answers kind of look the same, I would just find the actual equation of that line in slope-intercept form. We know it's going to be y is greater than or equal to, right? Because it's shading above and it's a solid line. We know the y-intercept is 3, so it's going to be something plus 3, right? Now what's the slope? Well, if I start at 3, I go down a -1 to the right 1, my slope is going to be -1/1x, or just negative x. Right? So now the problem is none of our answers look like that. No problem. So if that's our equation, I can make it look like one of these on the left easily by just moving x to the other side. Okay, so my answer is x plus y is greater than or equal to 3. And it looks like that is option A. Alright, let's move to 14. Or excuse me, that was 14. Let's move to 15. 15, again, we're going back to our algebraic skills here, our foundational algebraic skills. Which of the following is equivalent to this? Again, you notice none of these are in their final form of the answer. It's just which one of these four is going to look like it as you're working along here. So let's just one step at a time start simplifying this. I have 7, and then if I distribute the negative 2 to the x, I get negative 2x, and then the negative 2 to the positive 2, so I'm going to get a negative 4. Okay, less than negative 4, and then I'm going to take that negative 3, distribute the negative 1 is minus 3, distribute to the negative 3x, turns into a positive 3x. Right, at this point you can combine your like terms. 7 and negative 4, I get 3 minus 2x, less than negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7 plus 3x. Then I'm going to start solving, get rid of the smaller x here. It's always a good habit to get rid of that smaller x, right? And I get 5x. I don't have any of my answers that look like that quite yet, so maybe it's the next step. Get rid of my 7, so I get 10 is less than 5x. Now, we're pretty close. Our answer looks like D, except D is the opposite. So, the only difference that D provides is that instead of subtracting the 2x at that step, it looks like they, instead of adding 2x, it looks like they subtracted 3x. But it's going to be the same thing. Of course, in math, you're always going to get the same answer if you're doing it correctly, right? So the only difference here is they move this to the other side. So to move that to the other side, they're going to subtract 5x from both sides, and then they're going to subtract 10 from both sides. And there's your answer. Okay? All right, let's do another one. I think we are doing it to number 17. Okay, so we got 2 more problems. More graphing. Which of the graph best represents this solution? So hopefully this graphing is getting easier for you guys as by this point in the chapter. Okay, we know that for this equation we're going to shade above, and it's going to be a solid line. Okay, so look for the graph that has y is equal to negative 3x plus 3, right? And it's going to shade above. So really, that's the only one that has us shading above. So I think that's our answer right there. But let's just double check and look at the second equation. Y is less than x plus 7. Oops, that is the wrong graph. Oh, excuse me, my bad. Negative 3x plus 3, we're shading above. That's this line, or that's it. So I was wrong. Let's just make sure for this equation, y is less than or equal to x plus 7. So there is the x plus 7 line, and it's shading below. Okay, so our answer is going to be C. Sorry guys, brain fart. Okay, one last problem. 17. Let's look here. Which inequality does the shaded region of the graph represent? Again, this point should be pretty straightforward for you guys. I don't know what's going on with the answer options here. Why this 1 is showing. Let me see. Give me a second. Okay, so there's that 1 right there and that 1 right there. I don't know why that's there, so let's just ignore it for now. Let's just find our own equations for it. Okay, we know it's going to be y, and because this line is a solid line, it's going to be or equal to. but since it's going to be below this line, it's going to be less than. So y is less than or equal to, my y-intercept looks like it's a 0. So I'm just going to put that as a placeholder. I don't need to write that. My slope is going to be, well, let's take a look. Slope is going to be right there. So rise 4, run 1. Delta y is 4. Delta 1 is, delta x is 1. So it's y is less than or equal to 4x. Looks like the answer is option A. All right, guys. That concludes our problems for today. Come back tomorrow and we will finish the rest of these. Have a great day, and don't forget to shoot me an email if you have any questions.